Before you start the Shiur, could I just have a little bit?
Sure.
And I know you've spoken about this very often. Could you just tell me briefly again?
What was the question about? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
What the difference is between the Tachon and Amunah?
And Amunah. Okay.
And I know you've spoken.
Very important question. It's something we spoke about before, but it's something else. As much as we speak about, we always need to speak about it more. Okay, so the question for those listening on the Zoom is, what is the difference between bitachon and amunah? Bitachon is trust, amunah is faith or belief. How do we differentiate between them? In a nutshell, amunah means to believe that Hashem runs the world. Every single detail of the world is run by Hashem. If a leaf turns over from one side to the other, it's only because Hashem designed it to be that way. Everything is from Hashem. And therefore, whatever happens in our lives, we know it comes from Hashem. We daven to Hashem. Good or bad. It's all from Hashem. And we know that Hashem is ultimately good. So we know that even what appears to us to be bad is also for the good. Gamzu l'toiva. That's all included in bitachon, in amunah, faith, knowing that everything is from Hashem. Bitachon is to trust that Hashem is going to look after us. And we're in Hashem's hands, and we're safe in Hashem's hands. We trust in Hashem. So not only to believe that everything is from Hashem, but that Hashem is actually going to take care of us. It's going to work out for us. It's like a little boy walking with his older brother, and he knows that whatever happens, his older brother will take care of him. It's like a baby that's being carried on its mother's arms, knows that the mother loves him or her, and whatever happens, the mother's going to look after him. So to have that relationship with Hashem, we know that Hashem loves us, Hashem is with us, and we can trust Him, and we can know that He's always there for us, and we have nothing to worry about because He's going to take care of us.
Thank you so much.
It's a lot more than just believing in Him; it's also trusting.
One is trust, and the other is faith.
To be talking means trust.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So today is Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Rosh Chodesh Sivan is a very important day in our history because it's the day that the Jewish people arrived at Har Sinai to receive the Torah. Vayom hazeh bo Bamidbar Sinai, and this day they arrived in the desert of Sinai, opposite the mountain. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged nahar, and they encamped opposite the mountain. And our sages derive from the pasuk HaChodesh hazeh lochem. Over here it says hazeh, and by Matan Torah it says Vayom hazeh bo Bamidbar Sinai. So we know that hazeh refers to Rosh Chodesh. So the arrival at Har Sinai was on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Now, the arrival at Har Sinai is very significant. As we say in the Haggadah, at first glance it's very puzzling, but we say in the Haggadah, Ilu kervanu lifnei Har Sinai, v'loi nasan lanu es haTorah. If the Almighty would have brought us before Har Sinai and not given us the Torah, dayenu, that also would have been sufficient. Now that looks very puzzling at first glance, because what would be the purpose of coming to Har Sinai if not to receive the Torah? The only thing that makes Har Sinai unique is the fact that it is the place where we receive the Torah. So if we would have been brought before Har Sinai and not received the Torah, what would have been the purpose of the exercise? Why are we thanking Hashem? Ilu kervanu lifnei Har Sinai. If Hashem would have brought us before Har Sinai, v'loi nasan lanu es haTorah, not given us the Torah, would also be good. That would have been sufficient. So one of the answers to this question is, our sages tell us on the pasuk, as I mentioned before, B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, on the third month of the Jewish people leaving Egypt. Vayom hazeh bo Bamidbar Sinai, and this day, which is the day of Rosh Chodesh, they arrived in the desert of Sinai. It says, Vayichan sham Yisrael neged hahar, and Israel encamped opposite the mountain. So the word for encamped is Vayichan in the singular. Normally, when the Torah speaks about the Jewish people encamping in a certain place, it says, Vayachanu, they encamped. Here it says, Vayichan, he encamped in the singular. Why does it use the singular to describe the Jewish people? The answer is because when they encamped in front of Har Sinai, it was ki ish echad v'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. Tremendous unity. In fact, our sages say that all the other encampments were with tarumas of the machlekes. All the other encampments were with bickering and with arguing. And this time, the Jewish people camped in front of Har Sinai, was ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. And Hashem said, now that the Jewish people have displayed such unity, they are worthy of receiving the Torah. So the act, just the encamping in front of Har Sinai, just being there, had such an impact on Klal Yisrael that it made us ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. So we say, if we would have just had that experience itself, that would have been worth it for that alone. And Hashem's kindness, not only did we have the experience of coming before Har Sinai and becoming united like one man with one heart, but He also gave us a Torah. So we have so much more to be thankful. The Gemara in Shabbos goes through a detailed, step by step, how the Jewish people were prepared for Matan Torah during the days from Rosh Chodesh Sivan until Matan Torah. It says that on Rosh Chodesh itself, the day they arrived, like Amar Lahu v'lei Midi, Moshe didn't tell them anything in preparation for Matan Torah, Mishum Chulsha de'urcha, because they were exhausted from the journey. Next day, 2nd of Sivan, Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people, and Hashem had said, "Atem tiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh." You're going to be for me a kingdom of kohanim, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation, and you'll be my chosen people. Yisem li segula mikol ha'amim. You're going to be my segula, my uniqueness from all the nations, despite the fact that Gili kol ha'aretz, the whole world belongs to me, but I have chosen you to be my unique people. That was given to them on the 2nd of Sivan. Then on the 3rd of Sivan, Moshe Rabbeinu gave them the mitzvah of Hagbalah, the mitzvah of making boundaries around the mountain, and no one should approach the mountain. That was another preparation for Matan Torah. Then on the 4th of Sivan was mitzvah's prisha. They were told to separate from their wives in preparation for Matan Torah. And on the 5th of Sivan, they were, Moshe Rabbeinu was instructed to build a mizbeach on which karbanos were brought on behalf of the Jewish people, and the blood of the karbanos was sprinkled on the Jewish people. It was all preparation for Matan Torah. That was the day when they said Nasa v'nishma. And then on the 6th of Sivan, they actually received the Torah. So we have a day-by-day detailed schedule of how the time from arriving at Har Sinai until they received the Torah was used in preparation for Matan Torah. Now, the first statement, that on the day that they arrived at Har Sinai, Moshe didn't tell them anything in preparation for Matan Torah, Mishum Chulsha de'urcha, because they were weakened or exhausted from the journey, is a bit puzzling. Why is it a bit puzzling? Because the Jewish people were enthusiastically awaiting this moment for weeks. From the day they left Mitzrayim, they were told that in 50 days they're going to receive the Torah at Har Sinai. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu already knew this from the beginning when Moshe Rabbeinu was at the burning bush. Hashem told him, when you take this nation out of Egypt, you will serve the Almighty by this mountain. So he knew the purpose of taking the Jewish people out of Egypt was to bring them to Har Sinai, where they will serve Hashem. And they counted the days enthusiastically and patiently when we already come to Har Sinai and receive the Torah. Now, you can imagine that when they actually arrived at Har Sinai, the enthusiasm was full-blown. So how is it that Moshe Rabbeinu desisted from engaging with them in preparation for Matan Torah on the day they arrived? And that which the Gemara says that they were exhausted from the trip, it's very hard to understand, because we know the nature of people is that even if you're exhausted, if you're very excited, enthusiastic about something, your excitement and your enthusiasm makes up for the exhaustion. It turns the pendulum the opposite direction. People go on holiday, they come to a place and travel for a long time, and finally they arrive, and the kids want to go and see the place, and you say, well, everybody's exhausted, let's take a rest, we'll go tomorrow. They're not going to buy that. They want to see it now. They're waiting for who knows how long they're going to see it. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu start right away preparing them for Matan Torah? That's as far as Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned, and also the Jewish people themselves. How did they let Moshe Rabbeinu get away with it? Why didn't they insist? We want you to start preparing us for Matan Torah. We've arrived, let's get on with That which the Gemara says they were exhausted from the journey is also difficult to understand because they came from Refidim to Har Sinai. According to most of the Mefarshim, Refidim and Har Sinai weren't that far away from each other. So it wasn't such a long journey. And the clouds of glory went ahead of them, and they straightened out all the hills and all the valleys. So they walked on flat ground. So when you walk on flat ground, and it's not such a distance, and besides that, there's two opinions in the Gemara which day did the Rishchei Sivim fall? If it was Sunday or Monday. But it definitely wasn't that far from Shabbos. Shabbos, they had a full rest. And now they were journeying from Refidim to Har Sinai. So it's not such a terrible journey that needs such a big rest afterwards. And here the Gemara says that the didn't tell anything to them because they were weakened from the journey. So the Rebbe suggests that a journey is not only a physical journey. A journey can also be a spiritual journey. Of course, they had a physical journey, but together with the physical journeys that they had, each physical journey also contained a spiritual journey. As we know that the journeys of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim until Har Sinai were journeying also spiritually, because they were getting prepared for this great moment of Matan Torah. When they came out of Mitzrayim, they were just leaving. They were still entrenched in the 49 gates of Tumah, and they needed to cleanse themselves from those 49 gates of Tumah and absorb the 49 gates of Bina. So every journey that they moved from one place to another wasn't just a physical journey, it was also a spiritual journey. Emotional, right? As we know, that just like physical journey means moving from space one to space two, from place one to place two, so spiritually, whether emotionally or intellectually, a person can also be in a certain space, and they journey to a higher space or to a lower space or across the board. Either intellectually, you're in one intellectual state of being, and you progress to a higher intellectual state of being, or chas v'shalom, you drop to a lower level, or you move from one topic to a totally different topic that's moving across. And the same thing emotionally. You could be on a certain level emotionally, you can grow to a higher level emotionally, or to a lower level, or cross to another, from love to fear. I mean, there's different ways of journeying intellectually and emotionally. So when the Jewish people were exhausted from the journey, it's not so much, the focus is not so much on the physical journey, because the physical journey wasn't so exhausting. It was the spiritual journey that was exhausting. Why was the spiritual journey so exhausting? So we have to understand, mentioned before, that it says that when the Jewish people arrived at Har Sinai, they were ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. They were like one man with one heart. All the other journeys were b'tarumas u'b'machleikis, and here they were like one man with one heart. Which means not only did they reach the madrega that they all, I mean, normally we know that the nature of people is that they don't, just like two people don't look the same, two people don't think the same. And to suddenly come to such a unity that everyone should agree on the same actions, and not only everyone agrees on the same actions, despite the fact that they don't internally, and not internally on the same page, but furthermore, they had the same internal experience, with the same heart. So Yidden made tremendous progress from a situation where they were bickering and arguing, and suddenly they came to a place of complete unity. It doesn't say Erev Rab. It says that the Yidden traveled, and they came, V'yichan sham Yisrael neged the har, ki ish echad leivach. We know that the Erev Rab were also ki ish echad leivach. Good question. I don't know the answer. I would assume that, I mean, if they were, I'm not going to tell you that everybody underwent a Gatus. I don't know the answer. But the Yidden were definitely ki ish echad leivach. But it was a tremendous journey. And this journey was exhausting, spiritually. Let's take it a step further. What does it mean when we say that all the other journeys were the bickering and arguing? Yidden were bickering and arguing the whole time? Were they? It says that all the other journeys were the bickering and arguing. What were they arguing about? Good question, yeah. So, one of the simple ways of understanding it is that they weren't bickering or arguing about foolish things. The Eibishter gave us a Torah, and the Torah is given in such a way that there's room for various opinions. In fact, it's meant to have room for various opinions. right? Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say we decide that only a few days left to Matan Torah, we have to make some kind of a strong preparation for Matan Torah. Yeah, call a meeting, everybody gets together, we're doing something special in preparation for Matan Torah. So you have one person in the room who is tefillah minded, right? They say we should take on a special tefillah. Yeah, we should all get together and say some tefillah together. There's somebody else that's practically minded, say we should do a mitzvah together, right? Somebody else that's very much into Lashon Hara, say we should take on a Kabbalah not to speak Lashon Hara. Someone else who's into this, into that. Different people's mindsets work differently. Hashem created us with different mindsets. So it's natural, even when you have good intentions, when everybody wants to do the right thing, there's going to be different opinions on how to go about it. Even in understanding Torah, there is room for Beis Shammai's opinion and Beis Hillel's opinion. Right? Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were good people, but they still argued because they had different approaches of how to understand the matters of Torah. In fact, the Torah was meant to be studied that way. It says that when Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah on Har Sinai, he gave him a case, and he gave him 49 reasons why it should be Tahor, and 49 reasons why it should be Tameh. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, so what do I do? So he said, what do you mean, what do? You make a Sanhedrin and take a vote. And Achrei Rabim Lahatos, you go according to the majority. So Torah allows for different opinions. It's supposed to be different opinions in Torah. And all the opinions, all the opinions are the words of the living God. So if the Yidden were studying Torah and engaging in preparation for Matan Torah, and they were trying to enhance their connection with Hashem, there was surely room for various different approaches on how to go about that. So that's the Tanumas of Achlekes, the bickering and the arguing that with every encampment that they get, there was bickering and arguing because they were functioning normally the way people that are trying to achieve something positive function. There's room. Huh? But they were engaged in the process of preparing for it. They were learning Torah before. The Shevet Levi was learning Torah with Tznaim already. So how was it that suddenly, when they came to Har Sinai, they were ki ish echad b'leiv echad? What happened to all the different opinions? And furthermore, one of the Yidden who was there was Moshe Rabbeinu. So for everybody to become ki ish echad b'leiv echad means that everybody had to reach the same madrega as Moshe Rabbeinu. Or else, how can you say they were ki ish echad b'leiv echad? So obviously, there is a certain quintessential essence of the neshama, which is the same by every Yid. We discussed many times, there's 5 levels of the neshama. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. So in nefesh, there's various ways of expressing oneself practically in Avodas Hashem. In ruach, there's various ways of expressing yourself emotionally in Avodas Hashem. In neshama, there's various ways of expressing yourself intellectually in Avodas Hashem. In chaya, there's various ways of expressing yourself with a strong will in Avodas Hashem. But yechida is the essence of the bond that there is between the neshama and Hashem that's expressed in Mesiras Nefesh. That is the essence of the neshama that is the same in every Yid. So if they say that when they came to Har Sinai, they became ki ish echad b'leiv echad, means that they experienced the revelation of their own yechida. They came in touch with their own yechida nefesh, with the essence of their neshama, in which Moshe Rabbeinu and every other Yid is identical, and therefore they became ki ish echad b'leiv echad. So to such a journey, to reach the level where you're in touch with your yechida nefesh, we understand by such a journey was a very exhaustive experience. Not only that, the word exhaustion is not only a negative content. The word exhaustion can also mean bittul, self-nullification. In other words, there is the individuality of every individual, positive, worthy, but the individuality of every individual. And then there's a point at which every individual totally nullified themselves, so that only the essence of the neshama came forward, and they were ki ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. So that was the chulsha de urcha, this weakness, this exhaustion that Yidden experienced when they came to Har Sinai. That was that bittul that enabled the revelation of the Yechidah Shem Neshama, that they should be able to become ki ish echad b'leiv echad and be worthy of receiving the Torah. you want to ask something?
Yes, I was wondering how did they get to that? Because they didn't have any mothers and nothing really about was teaching them. So how did they get to that?
First of all, Moshe Rabbeinu was guiding them. But even when Moshe Rabbeinu was guiding them, just like Shammai and Hillel both learned under the same teachers, but their individuality, both mental and spiritual, took them on various routes. So when Moshe Rabbeinu guided the Yidden, as long as they were in touch with the various levels of their neshama, in which they are not all the same, they took it in different directions. So there was, how do we fulfill Moshe Rabbeinu's instructions? How do we take Moshe Rabbeinu's inspiration and make it that there's always room for different opinions? 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? At least 3. So here you have 600,000 Jews. Imagine how many opinions you have. But when it came to Har Sinai, they were ki'ish echad v'lev echad, because they were mevatel themselves completely. They totally nullified themselves. And the only thing that remained on the surface was the Yechida, which is the essence of the connection that Yid has with Hashem, and therefore they were ki'ish echad v'lev echad. Now, why is this such an important preparation for Matan Torah? So to understand why this is such an important preparation for Matan Torah, we have to ask ourselves another question. Why do we b'chlal make such a big deal about Matan Torah? Abraham Avinu studied the Torah, Yitzchak Avinu studied the Torah, Yaakov Avinu studied the Torah, the Shvatim studied the Torah, Yeshiva Shem Be'ever, they studied the Torah, Shevet Levi studied Torah, Mitzrayim. What's the big deal about the Torah? What was given when the Torah was given? What was given that they didn't have before? What changed when the Torah was given? Why do we make such a big deal out of it?
The final clarification of what it was. Like you were saying, someone was discussing, should I try not to speak Lashon Hara? They kind of merged into one. They reached the pinnacle of this is it.
Okay, so let me try to respond to that. First of all, when I say that there's room for different opinions, all those opinions are consistent with Torah. It's not that one opinion is consistent with Torah and one not. So even after the Torah was given, there continued to be machlekes by Yidden. Nobody says that machlekes is forbidden as long as it's machlekes l'shem shamayim. If it's machlekes for the sake of heaven, and we're all looking for ways to get closer to Hashem, and I suggest that we should focus on this, and you suggest we should focus on this. We should focus on this. It's both valid. After higher madrega, when we rise above all those differences and we reach a bittul to the essence. But and so they had the Torah, they knew what was in the Torah, but the Torah hadn't been given. So what's unique about the Matan Torah, about the giving of the Torah? What did that change?
Because the Torah wasn't given. How did they all study?
So maybe if I try to give the answer, maybe that will also clarify the question there. Until the Torah was given, when people studied Torah, they took according to their ability to take. So Avraham Avinu studied whatever he was capable of taking in. Yitzchak Avinu studied what he was capable of taking in. Yaakov Avinu studied what he was capable of taking in. The Shvatim, Shevet Levi, everybody took according to their capacity to take. But the essence of Torah is one with Hashem. We just learned in Tanya, God and His will are one. God and His wisdom are one. God and His will are one. So the Torah and the mitzvahs are the wisdom and the will of Hashem, which is one with Hashem Himself. So you're talking about something which is infinite. Infinity cannot be grasped by our ability to grasp. We are finite. Our capability is finite. Our ability to absorb is finite. So when you're talking about the infinity of Torah, that cannot be taken with our own energies, with our own abilities. The only way that we can get an access to the infinity of Torah, the essence of Torah, is when Hashem, who is infinite, gives you. So, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
He's given us his infinity.
He's given us his infinite essence together with the infinite Torah, which is one with His essence. It says when we say in Shavuos, we're going to say Vatitan in Kiddush and Shmonesrei Vatitan Lanu Hashem Elokeinu Ba'aga Moedim L'Simcha Chagim Zman L'Soshin. So the simple meaning is You Hashem have given us a whole list. But in Tanya he says that there's a deeper understanding of that. That the list starts with the first thing on the list is Hashem Elokeinu. You've given us Hashem Elokeinu. You've given us yourself. Because when Hashem gave us the Torah, the first word in Aseres HaDibros is Anoichi, which our sages tell us is that Ano Nafshi Ksavis Yehavis. Hashem says, I've taken my very essence, I've written it into the Torah, and I've handed it over to you. So when Hashem gave us the Torah, He gave us Himself. He gave us infinity. And that was not there in the Torah as we had it before Matan Torah. The Torah that we had before Matan Torah, everybody took according to their capacity to take. Here, Hashem was giving the Torah. And since Hashem is infinite, His capacity to give is infinite. So He gave us the essence of the Torah, which is one with the essence of Hashem. And from that moment on, every time we study Torah, in the Torah that we are studying is contained the infinite essence of Hashem. And that is the same whether a child is studying Torah, or an adult is studying Torah, or a big Rosh Yeshiva is studying Torah. Because the essence of Hashem is contained in every word of Torah. As I think I've mentioned, I'm sure I've mentioned it before, something that I enjoy focusing on. That Aseres HaDibros, the Psadik Goin says that Aseres HaDibros has 620 letters, corresponding to the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, and the 7 mitzvahs that Rabbanim, which together make 620. So every letter in the Aseres HaDibros alludes to one of the mitzvahs. So the Aseres HaDibros are an encapsulation of the entire Torah. Then the first dibur, the first of the 10 commandments, encapsulates the entire 10. So in the first one, you have all the 10, which encapsulate the entire Torah. Now, in the first dibur itself, so the word Anoichi, the first word of the dibur, encapsulates the entire dibur. The word Anoichi encapsulates the entire dibur. So in Anoichi, you have the whole dibur, which encapsulates the entire Aseres HaDibros, which encapsulates the entire Torah. Now, we have a concept called Rashi Tevis. Right? We have an acronym. We take the first letter of each word, because the first letter of each word contains the whole word. So the Aleph of Anoichi contains the entire word Anoichi, which contains the entire first dibur, which contains the entire Aseres HaDibros, which contains the entire Torah. What's the Aleph of Anoichi? The Aleph of Anoichi is Kametz Aleph A. So when you sit down with a child and you learn with that child Kametz Aleph A, that is the Kametz Aleph A, which encapsulates the entire word Anoichi, which encapsulates the entire first dibur of Anoichi, which encapsulates the entire Aseres HaDibros, which encapsulates the entire Torah. And the Noisein HaTorah, the giver of the Torah within the Torah. It's all in that one Kametz Aleph A that a little child is learning. And that you didn't have before Matan Torah. You had wisdom, but you didn't have the essence of Hashem contained within the wisdom and Him giving it with His infinite ability to give, so that each and every Yid receives from Hashem the entire Torah with the essence of Hashem within it. So how can you become receptive to such a gift? Only through bittul, through self-nullification, through being wise and clever. You don't become receptive to such a gift. So what was the most important preparation for Matan Torah? It was the chulsh of the urcha, the weakness, the exhaustion that the Yidden experienced as they arrived at Har Sinai, that they completely were nullified, and the essence of the neshama was shining forth, which is preparing them to be ready to receive the essence of the Torah from the essence of Hashem. So this preparation, which took place on today at Rosh Chodesh Sivan, is extremely significant. Now, why did they have to go further? You already had the first. You had already this bittul chulsha de orcha. Why do we need to go into the second of Sivan and the third of Sivan and the fourth of Sivan? The answer is because this incredible gift that Hashem wanted to give us, the essence of Hashem given over through the essence of Torah, the essence of every Jew. The purpose of the exercise is that we should take the Torah, that we should learn the Torah, we should absorb the Torah, we should take it in. In order for us to be able to take it in, we need to develop our capabilities as well. And for this began the process from the second of Sivan The Atam Tiyuli Mamlechas Koyanim, you should be for me a kingdom of Koyanim and a holy nation. Hagbala, Prisha, making karbanas, bringing yourself closer to Hashem. This is all part of the process of developing our ability, our capacity to take it all in and make it all part of us. But the giving of the Torah, that's the essence of Hashem in the essence of the Torah to the essence of every Jew. For that we got ready on Rosh Chodesh. And that's why when the Torah was given, it says that there were various compartments. Moshe had his own compartment, and the Skanim had their own compartment, the elders, and the rest of the Yidden had their own compartment. But they were all, every one of them, by every one of the Aseres HaDibros, Parcha Mishmasam, their souls expired. Because this infinite gift that they were receiving, this overwhelming infinite gift that they were receiving, that was straight across the board, the same for everybody. Although how they absorbed it, each person, each individual was different. Are we, so I can't hear.
Did this infinity stay with them?
Did this infinity stay with them the whole time? The infinity stays with us the whole time. The Torah that we have is Hashem's infinite Torah that contains Hashem's infinite essence. And every time we open up a sefer and we learn a word of Torah, a sentence of Torah, a thought in Torah, concept in Torah, a perek, a mishnah, that contains within it the essence of Hashem. That clear? Okay.
Sorry, one last question. What did you mean by compartments?
It says that by Matan Torah, although all the Jewish people were together, but they were in different categories. Moshe Rabbeinu had his experience of Matan Torah, and the Skanim had their experience of Matan Torah, and the rest of the Yidden had their experience. So even though they all received the essence of the Torah from the essence of Hashem, but the way that they absorbed it in their own capabilities depended on their own preparation. That's the second part of the equation. That's what happened the second, third, fourth, fifth days of Sivan. But Rosh Chodesh Sivan was the initial preparation of Le'amar Lu V'Lei Midi. The Gemara says he didn't say anything because of Chol Shador exhaustion. It was a process of total self-nullification. And that's what made them ready to receive the essence of the Torah from the essence of Hashem. Okay, we're going to move on to Tanya. I just should mention, before we do that, something which everybody knows, but it's always good to mention it again. In Tafshin Mem, 1980, the Rebbe declared a campaign to encourage everyone, men, women, children, even young babies, to be present in Shul by the Aseres HaDibros on the first day of Shavuos, and spoke very, very strongly about the great energy that is experienced when you hear the Aseres HaDibros in Shul, based on a Psikta de Rav Kana. There's a Medrash, Psikta de Rav Kana, which says, and Hashem says to the Jewish people, my children, I want you to read this portion every year, and I will consider it as if though you're standing in front of me at Har Sinai and receiving the Torah. Which means that when we hear the Aseres HaDibros read on the first day of Shavuos in Shul, that is re-experiencing the moment of Aseres HaDibros, the moment of Matan Torah, with everything that it has to offer. And generally we know that there's a concept of Hayam Ha'elu Niskarim V'Na'askim, that when we commemorate an event, it's reenacted. And in Torah in general, we have a concept of Mailim B'Kodesh. We go higher and higher in matters of Kedusha. So it's not just a repeat performance of what happened last year, it's an upgrade of what happened last year. So every year, Matan Torah gets greater and greater. And therefore, our preparation for Matan Torah has to be greater and greater. But a special emphasis on bringing children to Matan Torah, to Kabbalah Torah, to hearing the Aseres HaDibros, even very young children that don't understand anything. As we find in the Pirkei Avos, Rabbi Shiur ben Tanya, one of the disciples of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So it says that each one of the 5 disciples of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Mishnah says what their praise was. And when it comes to Rabbi Shiur ben Tanya, it says that his praise was Ashrei Yeladete. Fortunate was the mother who gave birth to him. And the Mefarshim explain what is it? Why is there a focus on the mother that gave birth to him? Because his mother, when he was a baby, his mother used to bring his cot to the Beis HaMedrash, that he should hear words of Torah. And from that, he grew up to be the Shiur B'Chanan. That's true even about the study of the oral Torah, where generally there's an emphasis on understanding. How much more so when you hear the written Torah, and especially when it's read from the Sefer Torah, and it's Seres HaDibros, on Shavuos, the impact that can make on a baby is immeasurable. So the Rebbe encouraged that from the age of 30 days, as in this week's Seder, it talks about counting the Levium from the age of 30 days. So from the age of 30 days onward, babies should be brought to shul for a Seres HaDibros, and if it's possible, without compromising any health issue, any health matters, even a younger child, if it's possible. And I remember I was actually in 770 that year, the year that the Rebbe spoke about it for the first time, and there was a rainstorm, like only in New York you see rain like that. It was cats and dogs. It was coming down in the most unbelievable way. And I remember I was in 770 and people were coming with babies wrapped up in plastic. It was unbelievable what was going on. In the rain, it was bad. And Baruch Hashem, a whole generation plus has grown up with this special energy of having heard Aseres HaDibros every year, and it seems to be doing them well. I mentioned once that this is just my own suggestion that all the Yom Tovim in the calendar can fall on Shabbos. The first day Yom Tov can fall on Shabbos, but every Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah can fall on Shabbos, even though it causes problems with Kiyas. Yom Kippur can fall on Shabbos, even though Shabbos you're normally supposed to delight, not fast. Kippur falls on Shabbos, you fast. The first day Sukkot can fall on Shabbos, even though it causes problems with benching Esrig. First day Pesach can fall on Shabbos. The only Yom Tov that the first day of Yom Tov cannot fall on Shabbos is Shavuos. Despite the fact that the Gemara says that the Torah was given on Shabbos. But the Yom Tov calendar is set up in such a way that Shavuos cannot fall on Shabbos. What the reasons are, we can discuss another time. But it's interesting. So for thousands of years, this was a mystery. Why all Yom Tov can fall on Shabbos and Shavuos can? And now it became very simple to work it out. Because if it was Shabbos, you wouldn't be able to bring babies to Aseres HaDibros.
I went to Koisu once.
Sorry, you have to speak louder.
I was at the Koisu. They started that set of divorce. Loads of little birds came in, all of a sudden. It was unbelievable. And the minute I finished it, they left.
The minute they finished, they left. Very interesting.
The sky was black.
Very interesting. Okay, so in Tanya, we were just about to go into the note in chapter 2 of Perek Beis on page above, which is equivalent to page 6. Page above, which is equivalent to 6 in the bilingual. So we were talking about the fact that the Alter Rebbe says, beginning of the chapter, he says that the neshama is a part of Hashem from above. Then he goes on to say that just like a child comes from the brain of the father, so the neshama of every yid comes from the thought and the wisdom of Hashem. Now, isn't that a change? Started off saying that it's from a part of Hashem himself. Now you're saying from the thought and the wisdom of Hashem. Now, the Rebbe clarifies and he says that in the case of Hashem, he and his wisdom are one. So when you say that it's a part of Hashem, it says from his wisdom, one of the things. And he bases this on a Rambam. The Rambam explains that hu hamada v'hu hayedeya. By HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not like by us. When we understand something, there's our understanding and there's us. Our understanding is a component of our personality. It's not who we are. But by Hashem, he and his understanding are one. This is based on the fact that we know the concept of Achdus Hashem, there's a oneness. Hashem is absolutely one. It's not made up of compartments. So and at the same time we say that Hashem is wise, Hashem is kind, Hashem is merciful. So the explanation that Rambam provides is that he and his wisdom are one. He and his will are one. He and his compassion are one. He and his kindness are one. But we don't understand how this is possible. because we can only understand things about Hashem that are comparable to the way they are in us. So we understand them in ourselves, and from ourselves, we work out how it is by Hashem. But over here, when the Torah tells us that in this instance, it's different by us than it is by Hashem, so we won't be able to understand it, because we don't have any point of reference from which to understand. But we accept that by Hashem, He and His wisdom are one. So since He and His wisdom are one, so to say that the neshama is part of Hashem Himself, but to say that the neshama comes from Hashem's wisdom, is pretty much saying the same thing. However, we pointed out in the previous year that this works according to the Rambam. But the Maral of Prague disagrees with the Rambam. And he says that the answer to this question about the oneness of Hashem cannot be given that Hashem and His wisdom are one. Because wisdom is something that has a definition, has a description. Hashem is beyond description. He's absolutely infinite. How can you take something that has a description and say that that is what Hashem is? You're limiting Hashem. And therefore, the Maral of Prague takes a different approach. And he says Hashem is infinite, indescribable, undefinable, infinitive. Any description will take away from that. That's why our sages describe the Almighty as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. Holy means separate from any description, separate from any definition. There's no definition, no description whatsoever that applies to Him. He is the essence of existence, beyond any description whatsoever. He's infinite. He's beyond any description whatsoever. What about His wisdom? What about His will? What about His kindness? What about His compassion? So Maral Prague says that these are tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created with which to deal with the world, which to create the world, with which to run the world. That's not Him. Well, the Rambam says that He and His wisdom are one. His wisdom is Him, His will is Him, His compassion is Him. And these are two different approaches. So the Alter Rebbe is a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that he relies totally on the Rambam when not everybody agrees with the Rambam. And therefore he has the note on the side. And he says, if you look at the note, and the sages of Kabbalah agreed with the Rambam. There's a sefer called Parshas from Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, one of the great Kabbalists, preceded the Arizal, and he writes in the sefer Parshas pretty much the same thing that Rambam writes, that the Almighty and His attributes are absolutely one. Now the question is, okay, so that's what the Ramak writes in Parshas. But we have, after the Ramak came the Arizal, and the Kabbalah of the Arizal generally describes the infinity of Hashem in a much greater manner. So even if the Ramak in Parshas would accept the Rambam's interpretation that Hashem and His wisdom are one, but what about the way the Arizal sees it? So the Alter Rebbe continues, and he says, "V'gam lafi Kabbalah Arizal, even according to the mysticism of the Arizal, Yatziva Milsa, the matter is still correct. B'soid hislabshus ein sabaruch v'ayde tzimtzumim rabim bekelim dechachma bina das datzilus, through the mystery of the Ein Sof enclothing itself through many contractions in the vessels of the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the world of Atzilus." Let me give a little bit of background of what's happening over here. At the last year, I said that there's the Rambam and there's the Maral, and the Alter Rebbe is going to explain how they're both right. The Rambam says that Hashem and His wisdom are one. The Maral says, how can you say such a thing? Hashem is infinite, and Chazal call Him HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says, according to you, Rambam, they should have called Him HaSeichel Baruch Hu. They should have called Him the intellect, blessed be He. Say Hashem and His intellect are one, so His definition is intellect. Obviously, Hashem is completely beyond description. So these appear to be two contradictory opinions. Either Hashem is absolutely infinite and cannot be described by any description whatsoever, as the Maral puts it, or as the Rambam puts it, He and His attributes are one. So the Alter Rebbe is actually going to explain, based on the Arizal and based on Baal Shem Tov, that they're both right. What does it mean they're both right? It depends what we're talking about. And the basis of this is, there is the way Hashem is essentially, in essence. And there is the way he voluntarily contracted himself and limited himself into a certain state of being in order to create the world. In other words, just think what the best way to come at this is. There's two psukim which you could say are contradictory to each other. There's a pasuk that says, "Ve'al demus hakisei, demus kemare adam ilmai." When the Navi saw the divine throne, so he describes the divine throne and the various angels surrounding it. And then he says, upon the image of the throne is like the image of man above it. So he describes Hashem as in the image of man. It's not very revolutionary because in Chumash it says that Hashem said, "Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu kitmuseinu," make man in our image. What does it mean? It doesn't chas v'shalom mean a physical image. Hashem doesn't have a physical image, but man is structured with intellectual faculties and emotional faculties. That's what makes up the personality of a person. His intellect, the three intellectual faculties, chachma bina das, the seven emotional faculties of chesed, gvura, teferes, netzach, hod, yesod, malchus. That's the image of man. So Hashem, as if it were, is also structured in this way. There's the three intellectual faculties, the three spheres of chachma bina das, and there's the seven spheres of chesed, gvura, teferes, netzach, hod, yesod, malchus. And the reason why we are that way is because we are made in Hashem's image. So when it says that upon the image of the throne, there's an image somewhat looking like a man, it means that you have the characteristics, divine characteristics, are somewhat comparable to human characteristics. Obviously, there it's infinite, and here it's finite. There it's in a very lofty manner, and here it's in a very earthly manner. But relatively speaking, it's the same image. Then there's another pasuk that says when Shaul messed up in the war with Amalek, and he spared the king of Amalek and he spared the animals of Amalek, and Shaul came, as Shmuel HaNavi came out to him and said that Hashem has rejected you as king. Hashem has despised you as king, rejected you as king because you have despised the word of Hashem. So then it says that Shaul came to Shmuel and he said, "I'm sorry. I'd like to correct it. Give me another chance." So Shmuel says to Shaul, "Netzach Yisrael," the victory of Israel, referring to Hashem, "Lo yishaker v'lo yinachim," doesn't lie, doesn't change his mind. Ki lo adam hu yinachim, because he's not man who changes his mind. So don't ask me to ask Hashem to change his mind, then re-accept you as king of Israel. Because Hashem has decided that you are rejected, case is closed. Hashem doesn't change his mind. He's not a man that can change his mind. The question is, the pasuk says clearly that Hashem is the image of man. Why do you say Ki lo Adam hu? He's not man. Is he like man or is not like man? So the answer is, depends what you're talking about. You're talking about Hashem in his essence. Hashem in his essence is infinite, indescribable, cannot be defined, beyond all description. However, Hashem has contracted himself voluntarily into a structure which is comparable to man. So as a result of the tzimtzum, which is this process of contraction, he has placed himself into a certain structure. So if you're talking about Hashem in his essence, before tzimtzum, without contraction, then he is completely infinite. And therefore, change his mind. What does it mean to change his mind? If the only reason you decided to do something was you understood that it's right, so if you give him a different understanding, you can change your mind. But Hashem is not man. He's not made up a structure of understanding and emotions. You're going to go change his mind. That's not possible. But through the process of tzimtzum, he has contracted himself into a certain structure, and that structure is similar to the structure of man. So it depends on what you're describing, what you're talking about. Similarly over here, The Maral of Prague, who says that Hashem is absolutely infinite and beyond all description, and there's nothing to talk about, he's right. He's right when you're talking about the infinite essence of Hashem as it is in its natural state, original state. But through the process of tzimtzum, of contraction, Hashem Kavayachal has limited himself and contracted himself into a structure. And that structure is made up of 10 spheres. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hegel, Mountains. And he has, not like the Maral says, these are tools that he created to create the world, because that causes other problems. That means Hashem Kavayachal has partners in creation. There's him and his tools that he created with. It's also not so straightforward. So the way Chassidus explains it is that Hashem has contracted himself into a structure of Esser Spheres and united with those Esser Spheres to the point that he and they become one. So as a result of the Tzimtzum, a process of Spheres has developed, which that group of Spheres is one with Hashem himself. So when we say that Hashem now has wisdom, it's not wisdom like human wisdom, that is me and my wisdom, or me and my will, me and my kindness, me and my compassion. In Hashem's case, he and his wisdom become one. So the wisdom which has emanated from Hashem as a result of the Tzimtzum, he has chosen to unite with it to the point where he and that wisdom are one. He and that will are one. He and that kindness are one. He and the compassion are one. And therefore, what the Rambam said, Hu b'chapmasei echad, stands because through the process of Tzimtzum, that the Almighty chose to contract himself into the spheres of Atzilus, he is take one with his wisdom. But what the Maral said also stands. Because if you're talking about the way Hashem is in his essence, he's completely transcends any description. And this is what he continues over here. And he says that according to the teachings of the Arizal, this matter is correct. In the mystical enclothing of the infinite light of Hashem through many contractions in the vessels of Chachma Bina Das of Atzilus. However, not the way things are above Atzilus, not the way things are in the essence of Hashem before this contraction takes place, outside of this outside of this contraction. As explained elsewhere, that the infinite essence of Hashem is infinitely transcends the whole concept of Chachma Bina Das. The distance from the highest form of Chachma, as it is in the highest world of Atzilus, to the infinite essence of Hashem is infinite distance. Because any description, once you give something a description, a definition, you're limiting it. Hashem is infinite. So he's infinite, he is omnipotent, he can do whatever he wants, and therefore he can also contract himself. But the way he is prior to contraction, he's absolutely infinite, absolutely indescribable, and therefore he has nothing in common. The essence of Chachma Bina Das is so distant from him, to the extent relative to Hashem's essence, the highest, most sublime, most celestial form of Chachma Bina Das is as far from Hashem like a piece of wood. All of them you have made with wisdom. Now, if you use the expression with wisdom, should have said chakamta, kulam b'chachma chakamta. Why does it say kulam b'chachma asisa? Because he's trying to imply that in comparison to the essence of Hashem, chachma, which is the most lofty level of existence, and asiya, physical existence, which is the lowest level of existence, compared to the essence of Hashem, they're both the same. But nevertheless, he has chosen to contract himself into a system of spheres, and he has chosen to do it in such a manner that he becomes one with them. So therefore, as we said before, I said last year, they're both right. If you're talking about the essence of Hashem prior to Tzimtzum, then clearly what the Maral says is correct, that the essence of Hashem is completely transcendent of any description. No description was appropriate when describing the essence of Hashem, even the highest description. But nevertheless, through Tzimtzum, the Almighty has voluntarily contracted himself into a structure, and in that structure, all the descriptions that are in that structure are become literally one with him. So therefore, at the end of the day, when you You say the wisdom of Hashem is one with Hashem himself. I hope that makes a bit of sense. Yes.
It's clearly in the Torah that even when the Rabbi happens, because the Rabbi says that I know him.
Yes. A very good question. So the question is, it says clearly in the Torah that by the Mabul, Hashem changed his mind. By Yinachem Hashem changed his mind. Yeah. Furthermore, it says that David HaMelech, right, after Shaul, right? So David HaMelech was chosen to be king. Yeah? So if Hashem chose Shaul to be king, how did he change his mind to make David king? Right? So it's clear that there are certain things that come from the essence of Hashem, which is transcendentism, and that's Lo Ya'adamhu. And there are certain things that come from the level of Adam. So the Maluch of Shaul came from the level of Adam. The Maluch of David came from the level of Lo Ya'adam. Therefore, the Maluch of David, you have the chapter 89 in Tehillim, says that even if the children will sin, punish them, but I won't take away the kingdom from them. Because I've given my word to David. So the Maluch of David comes from a level which transcends reason. Similarly, the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the Jewish people is a love that transcends reason. It was given by Bris Bein Absarim. Right? So that when you talk about the essence of Hashem as it transcends reason, that can't be nothing over there is subject to change. When you're talking about the way he contracts himself into a structure of reason, so from the perspective of reason, it could be changed.
So what inspiration did the Rabbi?
So obviously the madregas that we're speaking about over there are madregas that are within Seder Ishtalshalos. For example, it says that is Midas HaChesed, Midas HaRachmim, Midas HaDin. So by the Mabul it says that even the Midas HaRachmim was involved in bringing them out, right? And by Yizkor the Kibbutz Mayach, even Midas Hadin. So these are all midas that are being influenced by what's going on. So Hashem set out such a structure that He has midas, and His midas are influenced by our behavior. But the essence of Hashem transcends all that. Sure.
People wanted the king, so Hashem gave Shaul. So therefore, Hashem always knew that Shaul was going to fail anyway.
Hashem always knows the future. The question is, if there was a decision for Shaul to be king, and Hashem never changes his mind, how did it suddenly become rejected? So I'm saying that the decision itself can be coming from one of two levels. Because David HaMelech's descendants were also not always perfect. But because the kingship of David came from the essence, which is transcendent of all description, therefore it's not that commitment from Hashem that David should be king is not subject to change. While the decision that Shaul should be king, as long as he is worthy of it, it remains.
So in other words, Shaul's, if he behaved himself,
if he would have been worthy of it, it would have continued for as long as he was worthy.
Dominative affection.
Right.
But somewhere later on in the line, it would have then transferred over.
If they, yeah. I just want to clarify for everybody that there will not be a shiur. Next Wednesday is Isru Chag. There won't be a shiur. That's a very good question. There's an essay written by the Tzemach Tzedek called Sheirish Mitzvahs HaTfilah. It's 49 chapters, and the main topic of that essay is your question. And the answer is both. Both right. Okay, the Kabbalim speak a lot about the fact that we use different names of Hashem in different tefillos because they're associated with certain Kabbalistic concepts. And then, of course, the question is, are we davening to Hashem? We're not davening to any Kabbalistic concepts. The answer is, we're davening to Hashem, but Hashem is enclosing Himself and connecting with us various certain conduits. So we want to do things in such a way that will be most appropriate to draw down what we want to draw down through the appropriate conduit. But we're speaking to the essence of Hashem, without a doubt. It says clearly, B'chol karenu Elov, whenever we call to him, and in the word Elov, Chazal say, Elov v'loy l'midaisa. We call to him and not to his attributes. Now we call to him the way he's enclosed in his attributes. Okay? Everyone should have a wonderful Yom Tov. The simcha of the previous.